All right, I wanted to read a few stories from my book, Stone Diary, Confessions of a Hard Hewer. I thought I'd read a story about how I got started. And this story is called Building Laura's Studio. My sister needed a studio to do her artwork in. My brother had time between med school and his residency. I was between wives. Between the wars, as some would say. Others, myself included, might say, waiting for magic to happen again. Laura, my younger sister, continually inspired me with her sculpting. Her biggest problem was too many children. How she managed to do any work at all always amazed me. For years, her kids did what all kids do, demand that every moment be devoted to their every whim. She thought the studio should be built of stone at least part of the way up the wall. The fact that none of the three of us knew a thing about how to build a stone wall made no difference. We would flog away at it blind. Well, how hard could it be? Just pile a bunch of stones one on top of the other. My relations with my brother Steve had always been tenuous at best. He was a year older than me and always had the knack of getting my goat, knowing how to egg me on until I lost all sense of control and would end up flailing my arms in the traditional windmill technique, while he would patiently stand back and clobber me a good one. The actual hitting never hurt that much. It was the humiliation of me being out of control that always hurt the most. He always seemed to do this when all our buddies were around. Our early adulthood had continued this pattern, but for some reason we kept trying to relate to each other. Mostly it was because we would have so much fun between the fights. His latest incarnation as a doctor had come after a brief trial as partners in the Ramberg brothers woodworking company. We were going to set the world on fire building fine furniture. I think it was after the second shingling job in the heat of July, the only paying work we could find, that he made the wise career move towards medical school. I continued with construction work and would help with building projects at the house he bought near the med school. Building things together was not a new activity for the two of us, nor was it a new activity with my sister. She had spent those same years having babies and adding on to the big house at the farm to accommodate her ever-expanding family. Usually I would help her and her then husband with the framing of whatever room they were adding on to, and of course as soon as it was enclosed they would move into it and spend the next year finishing the interior, only to find Laura pregnant yet again. And wouldn't it be nice if we added this other room on and the cycle would start again? But building with stone was something new and different for all of us. We had enough sense to know that we should have a foundation. We laid out the perimeter of the building as a 7-sided structure. The 7 facets of the roof would come together off center. Laura held the quartz crystal in her hand to show us what she wanted. We strung strings between the stakes and thought we had really done something. Not much happened after that for quite some time. And one day, after waiting for my siblings to begin, I grabbed a shovel and started digging. The dirt was loamy. I didn't have to think, just dig. Soon, my brother got word that we had started and showed up to help my sister and me. Just dig. My brother always had his ideas of how things should be done. I had learned that to go against his way of doing things just made it harder and it often ended with me doing the classic windmill and then getting clobbered. But this was just digging. Put the shovel into the ground, stomp down with your foot, throw the dirt over there. I kept my mouth shut and kept on digging. I could tell this might be a long project. Finally, we all agreed that filling our ditch with cement and rebar would suffice, and the big cement truck pulled up in the field and dumped its load. Sure enough, it got hard, and we had a 7-sided ditch filled with concrete ready to lay stones on. As usual, my impetuous way was, if you're going to build with stone, then go find some stones. So I drove the truck down to the creek and started throwing stones into the bed. I did this a few times and thought I had quite the pile of stones. The trouble with impetuosity is that you always get to the point of saying, well, now what? I looked over my pile of rocks, all rounded and cracked, full of holes and fragmented, and didn't quite know what to do next. It was late afternoon by then, and so whatever happened could wait until morning. One of the women who lived at the farm had been watching our progress as we dug and then filled our ditch with concrete. And now when she saw my pile of stones, it was clear to her that we were going to build something. And also clear that we really didn't know what we were doing. She said she had a friend who was a stonemason, and the rocks we had piled up didn't look at all like the stones he used. Maybe she could persuade him to give us a lesson in stonemasonry. Well, I was a little taken aback, as I had just spent the whole afternoon collecting rocks, and I was in no mood for someone to tell me that my rocks weren't good enough and that some professional could teach me anything. The next day, she showed up with this tall, lanky guy wearing a straw hat like the Amish wear. He immediately dismissed my pile of rocks and spent the next 2 hours telling us everything about building with stone that we could possibly want to know, plus plenty about other things thrown in for good measure. This guy, Keith, just kept on talking and talking. I was still holding out that somehow my rocks from the day before would transmit themselves into stone. Stone to build with and not just be rocks. Rocks to throw into a ditch. When Keith told us where to find some real stone, my siblings were hooked, and my little pile of rocks became a foundling. One of the main things that Keith taught us was that it was going to take a lot of stone to build what we wanted to build. We spent the next week busting up slabs of stone that had been dug up by the county road crew. We used a sledgehammer, hitting it 6 inches in from the edge, just like Keith told us. Loaded up the now more manageable stones into the truck and hauled them back to the job site. By the time we decided we had enough stones, our enthusiasm was waning. We picked up a load of masonry sand from the sand quarry near the river and bought bags of masonry cement. We bought a stone hammer just like the one Keith showed us. We were ready to build a stone wall. The first stone of any project has always looked a little silly to me, sitting there by itself. The second stone starts to define things. The wall goes in a line right here. These first stones in the wall were done with much discussion and timidity. The three of us would gather around a big stone and figure out where the face of the stone would be and where we needed to smack it with our new stone hammer so that it'd break just right. We watched as one of us would beat on the stone and grimace as it broke in two. Not at all what we had in mind, but soon we started building our wall with the halves, if that is what we ended up with. Before long, it started to look like a wall, and we no longer had to have as much discussion about any one stone. If it broke in half, then lay up half. The wall rises 3 feet tall around the perimeter of the building, with big timbers from a warehouse torn down in Kansas City going up the rest of the way. Other timbers go up to the offset peak to make the roof. My brother and I only argued a little on how all these different parts would fit together. My sister put up with us. My sister has made many beautiful works of art in her studio. Many years later, when her marriage ended, she made it her home. My brother and I made a pact after building that wonderful building to not fight anymore. A few years later, I knocked on Keith's door and told him that I knew a guy that wanted a stone wall built. He said he would take on the job if I would act as his assistant. That is how I began my apprenticeship to become a stonemason. Once again, this is from my book, Stone Diary, Confessions of a Hard Hewer. You can find it on Amazon, and here in a little while, you'll find it right here at our local bookstore, The Raven. Thanks for watching.